about 1 more minute.
Okay. Oh, I'll leave now.
No. Don't go anywhere.
You want to play that little thing?
Oh, yeah.
The music blowing away.
And I hear Romeo.
An appreciation for how hard it is for musicians who do big outdoor concerts.
Oh my gosh.
It can be a struggle.
All right.
Good morning, and welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Unfortunately, not so warm and sunny this morning, so we are live streaming only today. Our mission here at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Mary Jo Hennessy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer to our congregation, please visit us at sunnyhill.org and click on the New to Sunnyhill button. There you can get more information about our congregation and sign up to receive our weekly electronic newsletter called The Beat. We would love to let you know how you can connect with us while we are still somewhat closed, unless it's warm and sunny out. Today's service explores the issue of abundance mentality as opposed to scarcity mentality. The idea is if that we understand there is enough time, enough resources, enough grace for everyone, including ourselves, then it has a deep impact on the way we live our lives and helps us become more generous and more open to the possibilities that life gives us. Our opening words were written by Linda Barnes. Suspended between all that was and all that might be, we struggle to find this very moment, to live this very moment. Let us sit together for a moment and savor this moment. Let us relish this between time, where past meets future. Let us harbor a faith that reminds us that right now, right here, is enough.
We'll light our chalice with these words. In honor of the illuminating light of love and understanding, we light our chalice. In remembrance of the paths blazed by those who came before us, we light our chalice. In celebration of the beauty of autumn and this sacred time we share, we light our chalice.
Morning. Hope you're singing along at home. Our opening hymn is going to be right here. We traveled long, we traveled far to be right here where we are. Reach out our hand, no need to fear, 'cause all we need is right here. All we need. All we need, all we need is right here. All we need, all we need, all we need is right here. The night was dark, but the day is bright. Together we can lift our eyes to all we love and we hold dear, 'cause all we need is right here. All we need, all we need, all we need is right here. All we need, all we need, all we need is right here. All we need, all we need, all we need is right here. All we need, all we need, all we need is right here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Once there was a place that was very bleak and dreary. The only colors there were shades of gray and brown. Nothing grew. No grass, no flowers, no trees. This place was surrounded by walls and fences. People actually lived in this place. Every day, they were forced to work digging holes and then shoveling the dirt they dug back into those exact same holes. This work made them feel tired and their bodies ached. And they felt hopeless, because their work never amounted to anything. The food they ate was just a little bread and some broth. Their bellies were never full. They were always hungry. They got sick a lot, too, because the food wasn't very nutritious. Definitely not enough to keep them healthy. At night, they slept, if they slept, on hard wooden beds. They had no pillows nor blankets, so they were cold, and they shivered much of the night. When they did sleep, they had bad dreams, and when they woke up, they were just as tired as they had been the night before. One morning in this place, a girl went out. Suddenly, she saw something on the ground, something special and precious. It was a red raspberry, just like this. She picked it up and quickly put it into her pocket to keep it safe. She kept it there all day, and at night, she found a leaf that had blown in from the outside. She put the leaf in her hand and placed the red raspberry on the leaf, just like this, and went to her best friend and presented it to her as a gift, and her friend received it. I tell you this story, not only because it reminds us that in the most sad, hopeless, bleak, and dreary places, we can, if we keep our eyes open, find miraculous surprises. Treasures that are bright and sweet and delicious, like that raspberry. But more importantly, when we find those treasures, we can give them up, give them away, give them to a friend. This story is true. It actually happened. And I want you to remember it. Today, I brought a bunch of red raspberries that I wanted to share with you all. But we're not together today in person. So instead, I want you to use your imagination. I want you to imagine yourself taking a raspberry, just like this, and holding it into your hand. Holding your imaginary raspberry. Think of how it might feel if your world is dreary, sad, hopeless, and bleak. And in that world, your friend has just given you a sweet, luscious raspberry. This raspberry was the one thing your friend truly owned, and she chose to make it a gift for you. Picture in your mind what that would look like, and in your heart what that would feel like. And when you're ready, pop that sweet imaginary raspberry into your mouth and savor its tartness. It's a reminder of hope when it's hard to find. Today in our RE classes, we would have been talking more about our feelings and emotions. While we aren't meeting today in person, I invite all of you to take some time together as a family to work through the lesson plan at home. It can be found in the link on Facebook or in today's order of service. Thank you.
We have several joys and sorrows that were submitted by members of the congregation. After each one that I read, please respond with, "We hold you in our hearts." A sorrow from Michaeline Stabile and Wendy Bell. Michaeline says, "We're traveling home with heavy hearts and an emptiness where Penny, our little 15-year-old mini dachshund, will always reside. After a steady decline, she left us while we were on our way to the vet on our way home from Assateague Island, Maryland. It's hard to imagine traveling on without her in the back seat. Penny never wanted to be left behind. Thanks to all for graciously accepting her as part of our lives. To Michaeline and Wendy, we hold you in our hearts." A couple of sorrows from Jeff Vipperman. Jeff says, "I have two sorrows. First, this past Wednesday, I lost my father after suffering many years with dementia. Second, on the same evening, my best friend from high school called to tell me his mother has stage 4 cancer. If you could please keep her and her family in your thoughts or prayers. To Jeff, his friend, and both of their families, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow from Amy Kent. Amy says, Jesse Cannon, a longtime member of the UU Summer Institute community, lost his battle with leukemia this week. He was 23 years old and will be missed. He and his family are members of the Columbus UU Church. To Amy and to the entire UU Summer Institute community, along with Jesse's friends and family, we hold you in our hearts. Our meditation and musical meditation this morning were inspired by a line from the 23rd Psalm, which is the psalm that begins famously with, "The Lord is my shepherd." The specific line that we're focusing on this morning is, "My cup runneth over," or "My cup overflows," or in the original Hebrew, "Kosi Ravaya." Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. We pause for a moment of stillness to consider who we are and where we are in our lives, to consider the places where we are whole and the places where we are broken, to consider the joys and sorrows, the hopes and regrets, the beginnings and endings that comprise our lives. As we pause, we are aware that sometimes it all feels like too much. Too much to think about, too much to do, too much to feel, too much stuff. And yet we are aware of how much we have to be grateful for. The love of friends and family, the beauty of the world, the rain that soothes and the sun that warms, music and laughter, breezes and breathing, blessing upon blessing upon blessing. We pause now for a moment of silence as we consider all these things and more. In the words of the psalmist, Kosi Ravaya, our cup overflows. Our cup overflows with life, with loss, with love, with worries, with wonder. Let us enter into the ebb and flow of life in the spirit of peace and the love that calls us toward union with all. Amen. Kosi Ravaya, Perhaps one of the greatest challenges of this pandemic era is learning how to make the shift from merely surviving to thriving. When the great shutdown occurred in the spring of 2020, we all went into survival mode. And as long as we remained in that shutdown survival mode, at least for a brief period of time, we were pretty able to cope. Not great, but well enough. Because of our evolutionary history, our brains are wired to deal with immediate threats, like, for example, being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, something that's happening right this second. Or slightly longer-term threats, like, for example, being aware that this is the next month or two, the season when saber-toothed tigers attack, so we must be on guard. Our brains, however, are not well suited for dealing with much longer-term threats, like a pandemic, which can last not just minutes or days or weeks, but as we are finding out, months or even years. When faced with a crisis, our brains naturally equip us well for the short term and the slightly longer term, but our brains simply do not help us much with the much longer term crises and challenges that we encounter in our lives. But difficult as it may be, we need to work on turning from surviving to thriving during this time. Surviving is about me and my immediate family. Thriving is about what connects us to something larger. Surviving is about this moment and maybe the next couple of months. Thriving is about the course of a whole lifetime and maybe many lifetimes. I'm not saying that you should feel bad about yourself if all you can manage to do in this moment is to survive. I get it, and I've experienced it myself. There are times when we simply cannot see those bigger values and that larger meaning. Times when all we can do is hang on for dear life. And that's okay. Do what you need to do. But there comes a time when we must start to move from surviving to thriving, which requires some intentionality and some hard work. And it needs making a shift from scarcity mentality to abundance mentality, a concept that has been described as follows. People living from a scarcity mentality see life as having only so much, as though there were only one pie out there. People with a scarcity mentality have a very difficult time sharing recognition, credit, power, or profit, even with those who help in the production. They also have a very hard time being genuinely happy for the success of other people. The abundance mentality, on the other hand, flows out of a deep inner sense of personal worth and security. It is the paradigm that there is plenty out there and enough to spare for everybody. It results in sharing of prestige, of recognition, of profits, of decision-making. It opens possibilities, options, alternatives, and creativity. It should be noted that abundance and scarcity mentality have little or nothing to do with what you actually have in terms of worldly possessions. In fact, in my experience, abundance mentality is more frequently found among people who have less in terms of material goods than among those who have more. Some years ago, I worked part-time at a men's homeless shelter while I was also working full-time as a fundraiser for a major university, mostly helping solicit large gifts from wealthy alumni. At the homeless shelter, which sat just 2 blocks away from my well-appointed university office, the men had nothing. No money, no property, no credit, no jobs. Even the clothes on their backs were cast-offs rather than something they had bought for themselves. But the sense of abundance most of the time at this homeless shelter was remarkable. The men had next to nothing, but what they did have was shared with one another generously and joyfully. For the most part, not always, but for the most part, these men who were themselves cast-offs somehow managed to live from a place of abundance. On the other hand, many of the donors I worked with, again, not all, but many, were clearly living from a scarcity mentality. Managers of multi-billion-dollar hedge funds who traveled by jet from their homes in Aspen, Colorado to their homes in the Hamptons, sometimes asked as if giving a few $100,000 to the university was somehow going to break the bank. It's amazing that some of the world's wealthiest people can be so incredibly unaware, seemingly, of the abundance that surrounds them, while some of the world's poorest people see and appreciate even the smallest things as great gifts that are to be shared with all. But if we are to make a shift from surviving to thriving, not in a material sense, but an emotional and spiritual sense, then we must start from a place of abundance. And one of the places that we can sense and experience that abundance is in the natural world. A sense of abundance begins with an appreciation of the great bounty that surrounds us in nature. Which brings me to this Wendell Berry poem, which I will read in its entirety and then break it down a little bit. This poem, titled "The Wild Geese," was an inspiration for a song by Amy McCreath, which we'll sing in just a few minutes. This is "The Wild Geese" by Wendell Berry. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp, sweet of summer's end. In time's maze over fall fields, we name names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. This poem begins with this beautiful, crisp, crystal clear image of autumn. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp, sweet of summer's end. There's this wonderfully articulated sense of motion on horseback, accompanied by appeals to our sense of taste and smell in the form of wild grape and persimmon. Berry then turns from our physical senses to an expanded sense of time. In time's maze, over fall fields, we name names that rest on graves. Time in this poem is not entirely linear. It's like a maze, something that we wind our way through, and it includes not just this moment and those who are alive now, but also the remembrance of those who have died, family and friends whose presence we still experience in some ways. And then the poet moves from the present to the past to the future. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. We see hidden in the fruit of autumn the seeds that will bring new life come spring. And the image of the persimmon is evocative. The genus name for persimmon, Diospyros is Greek for food of the gods. And in the Buddhist tradition, persimmons are a symbol of transformation. So the persimmon in the poem, discovered in the middle of an autumn horseback ride near a graveyard, suggests the possibility of transformation and future life and abundance. And then these geese come into the picture. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Geese appeal to poets for a number of reasons. Geese are social animals and are fiercely loyal. They mate for life and are very protective of their partners and offspring. If a goose's mate or chicks become sick or injured, they will often refuse to leave their side, even if winter is approaching and the other geese are flying south. Wendell Berry sees in these particular geese an innate sense of faith in what is here. He says, abandon as in love or sleep holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith, what we need is here. The ancient faith that what we need is here, consciously or unconsciously, is what has sustained the natural world for millennia. It's what allows plants and animals and the earth itself to thrive and not just survive. It's what allows all the world to turn from a sense of scarcity to a sense of abundance. And then Barry concludes, and we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. Barry is suggesting that what lies beyond this world is perhaps not as immediately important or relevant as what is here around us right now. And that our task as human beings and as earthly creatures is to become quiet in heart so that we might begin to sense, just as the wild geese do, that what we need is here. Writer and educator Parker Palmer, writing about this poem, suggests that when we are in community with others in deep and meaningful ways, we find that what we need can often be found within the community itself. He says, if there's an objective need for more money to pull off an important project, finding it begins with reaching into our own pockets, coming into community with others who do the same, and then extending that community to include outsiders who can help. He says, if there's a need for expert advice, let's first look around our own community to see if it's available there. If we don't have a community, let's look inside ourselves to find and change some of the reasons why that's the case. The roots of community itself are found within us. Palmer continues, if a neighborhood has become unsafe, neighborhood programs based on the principle that we're all in this together have proven effective in reducing crime. Such approaches are more effective and safer by far than when everyone straps on a handgun. If we want nobler people elected to office, let's remember how often we end up with carbon copies of our own shadows. Leaders who represent projections of the electorate's prejudices and fears. Then, let's work with ourselves and others to practice a politics worthy of the human spirit. Every year, Parker Palmer writes, billions of dollars are spent trying to persuade us that we are resource poor. Why? Because there's money to be made by convincing us that what we need is owned and sold by someone else. In this culture of commercialism, it's hard to wrap our minds around the notion that what we need is here. It's even harder to trust it enough to act upon it. Our capacity to thrive rather than merely survive, both as individuals and as larger communities, depends on our ability to turn from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, and to realize, in fact, what we need is here. I hope and pray that as we continue to face the great challenges of our era and the great and small challenges of our lives, we might pause to experience the grace and beauty of the natural world, that we might become quiet in heart, knowing just as the wild geese know, that what we need is here. May it be so. Amen.
We do not have a designated offering this morning, but if you are willing and able to make a gift to Sunnyhill via our online giving system, you can do so in one of two ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Once you get to the drop-down menu, just choose either 2021 Pledge Collections for payments toward your pledge, or non-pledge collections for any other gifts. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. And as always, we thank you for your generosity.
This song, as I mentioned earlier, was written as a response to the poem, and it uses just the last line of the poem, "What we need is here." And we will repeat that a number of times. Feel free to sing along. We're going to have the choir here singing harmonies, so I'm counting on everybody at home to make up your own harmonies. What we need is here. What we need is here.
Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words, well, before I get to the closing words, I've been asked to make a pitch for our pumpkin patch. We need more people to sign up for shifts. So if you're available, even this afternoon, there are spaces available. You can look at our website, I think, to find the link to the sign-ups, and also for the next several days. We're getting close to having sold all of our pumpkins, so I think if we can cover just a few more days, we will be there. And if you haven't bought your pumpkin yet, remember that we are here selling. Our closing words are a poem titled Psalm by Stuart Kestenbaum. The only psalm I had memorized was the 23rd, and now I find myself searching for the order of the phrases, knowing it ends with surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Only I remember seeing a new translation from the original Hebrew, and forever wasn't forever, but a long time, which is different from forever, although even a long time today would be good enough for me. Even a minute entering the house would be good enough for me. Even a hand on the door, or dropping today's newspaper on the stoop, or looking in the windows that are reflecting this morning's clouds in its first light. Go in peace.